rescue Mrs. Holmes under the car. So when I lived in North Ogden, I used to shovel Mrs. Holmes's driveway next door. Maybe she paid me. I can't remember if she did or not, but I always try to help out. And I imagine she paid me from time to time, but I don't recall. It seemed like she'd pay me $5 or something, but I don't. Anyway, but I liked helping her. She was a nice old lady, and her son, his name was Bruce also, and he was Down syndrome and a good man, and her husband died when fairly early when we had moved there. He was kind of fussy. I remember the Mr. Holmes. His name was Amacy Holmes. He There was a fence between our house and their house, and my dad moved in, and Mr. Holmes come over to Dad one time, and he sticks his nose over the fence, and he starts telling my dad what to do. He goes, "Hey, don't stick your nose over that fence too far; it might get broken." Anyway, but one day Mrs. Holmes, she was an older lady. She had to be in her 70s or 80s at the time. She drove her car into the driveway, and she left it in drive. So she got out of her car and left it running because she had to go get something. And as she left it running, she was walking forward, and the car started. It lurched. It pulled forward towards her, bumped her onto the ground, and then the tire rolled up against her foot. She had this. Her shoe was kind of a heavy, thick high heel, not a thin, skinny high heel, but a thick, heavy high heel, and her foot bumped up against that car tire, and that shoe, because it was so dense and big, it blocked the car from pulling more forward. So she left it in drive accidentally, pulled forward, and I heard screaming. I'm like, man, what's going on, Mrs. Holmes? I knew there was something happening, so I ran over to her house, and there she is, laying on the ground, pinned up against the back wall of the garage, with the car up on top of her on her foot, up against her heel, had her trapped right there. It didn't hurt her foot, didn't crush her foot, didn't roll up on her leg or anything, but it bumped against it, and that high heel, big thick high heel, stopped the car from driving over her body. And luckily, and I felt kind of like I saved her life. And she was always a little bit nicer to me after that. When I jumped in the car, put it in reverse, and said, "Are you okay, Mrs. Holmes?" Kind of felt like I saved her life. It was kind of cool. But anyway, she was nice to me, and she was even nicer to me after that.